But given what they did with the Hunter and how like in depth that game was, I
Yeah.
assume there will be like different rods and reels and different test lines of fishing line, different lures you can use.
Ooh,
I assume,
yeah. What about
yeah,
spearfishing?
I doubt it.
Scuba diving and
I
spearfishing. So, we are going to finish up this episode with a delving deeper. And, Alex, I sent you something recently in the Call of the Wild franchise.
You did.
First, there
Which
was
I
the
knew
Hunter.
about already.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the people Expansive Worlds,
Yes.
who make Call of the Wild, or the Hunter Call of the Wild, are coming out with a game August 31st, and it is Call of the Wild The Angler.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't know why they didn't name it The Angler Call of the Wild instead
yeah.
of like the other one. So
Mm.
this is a fishing. It says experience open world fishing like never before. I did wishlist it because I'm curious to see what they do with it.
Yeah.
But obviously you have played Call of the Hunter or
Call of the Hunter,
Wild. Call of the Hunter. The Hunter.
Wild.
It's a very immersive, very detailed hunting game
Yes.
with a lot going on for the different animals, the skins, the furs, the sizes, trophies you can get. It's pretty in depth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty fun game. I played many hours in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering what they're gonna do with this. But it brought up the discussion between me and Crave, our lovely brand director and graphic artist, about fishing in games and how generally it's not really the best experience in like non-fishing games. So like fishing in MMOs, for instance, generally consists of pushing a button, waiting, and then when the bobber bobs, you push another button.
Yes.
In the case of World of Warcraft, you click your fishing icon, then you wait until it bobs, and you click the bobbing icon, you collect your fish. And
Yes.
then you just kind of do that. It's a very low energy, very repetitive task.
Yes.
I quite enjoy fishing in games like that because it's mindless and I can relax and do something else while I'm gaming and grind out some fish or some loot, because sometimes you get stuff that's not fish.
It's true.
New World's fishing mechanic was a little bit more involved, where you had to like watch the meter to not break your line.
Yes.
I thought it was fine. Again, not crazy fun, but it was, the discussion was that a lot of games just kind of have being a boring task.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I can give you some examples. Like, in Stardew Valley, they basically have, like, fishing. You can fish off of pretty much any piece of water, and then it will tell you, ooh, you got a hit, and the idea is that you rapidly push a button to try and keep, like, your fish in the sweet spot of your reeling in, and it will slowly descend over the course of time. Sometimes there'll be like treasure chests or something that you can also try to grab, but your fish will get away. So they make it into like a mini game.
How does the treasure chest get away?
The treasure chest doesn't get away, but if you go to try and collect the treasure chest and the fish isn't right there, the fish will get away really rapidly if it's not in that sweet spot at the same time. I've seen like some small kind of mini games that they would put into like Final Fantasy, where you'll fish with different lures and stuff like that. When I played Grow, they have the whole thing where basically once you catch a fish, you have to just keep like pushing in the opposite direction of the direction the fish is going to try and reel it in. And then the other one that I think does a little bit more of a production about it, because of course it does, was Yakuza. I think it was the third installment or fourth, maybe, did it too, where they get into like where you're catching like sharks and squids and stuff like that, and it's this big production that's kind of reminiscent of the actual action combat thing, where you're like really like pushing to the side and then pushing and Kazuma's really getting into it, and then you get the fish and the fish like leaps over your head and stuff like that, and it's like fishing success. Like it's a whole big thing.
I hope you insert that video clip in here.
I'll have to see if I can find a good clip of the absolutely insane thing that they do. But then again, Yakuza is one of those things where they'll always take like the many mini games and try to make them just like more actiony.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it boils down to. Is it's either a mini game or a quick time event typically, or it's relegated to just like kind of a click a button.
Sure.
And I feel like, generally speaking, gathering in games for crafting and for meals and cooking, and which is also crafting, generally crafting doesn't tend to be very action oriented, very intense, very exciting in a lot of games.
Yeah.
Which, it's kind of a subsystem to get you things to give you the items to do crafting with. So it's not necessarily about the act of doing that itself that you're going to really engage and enjoy with, but you're going to take the stuff you get so you can use it to produce other things that you might enjoy more. And it's interesting because I was kind of saying, fishing is different than like chopping wood.
Sure.
Because chopping wood generally means you go from a tree, chop it down, then you have to find another tree.
Yep.
And the difference there is that you're moving from location to another location, and in between the location there's travel and potentially combat or other stuff to get in the way to break it up. But fishing a lot of times ends up being standing in one location and just casting your rod into the same spot for hours.
Yep.
Unless you're looking for a fishing node or chasing those down, and then you're just doing node, go whatever. Oh, I found a node, and then you're fishing kind of like you would with herbs or mining.
Yeah.
In a lot of games.
Yeah. They do that a lot in the MMOs as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think World of Warcraft had something like that, but also Phantasy Star I played for a little bit, and they have a similar thing. It's like you're just fighting a bunch of monsters. Oh, you run across a body of water. Oh, there's a fishing spot. Just put your lure in. Yep, got something. Okay, reel it up. Boop.
Yeah, and in the MMOs generally, or even like Nier Automata.
Oh, yeah.
For instance, you could fish wherever there was water.
Yeah. Yeah,
and like, there were a couple places that you could fish up, like the other drones, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think so, yeah.
But those weren't like, you don't just randomly find them. There's spots, and you have to know that they're there.
Yeah. From
context clues around the area, and then you can fish those up. And I gave the example of in ZG in WoW, the raid Zul'Gurub, you used to be able to go in there with a special lure and fish up a raid boss.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so you could fish that up as like an added bonus that was only available in that actual raid. It was just an extra boss.
Right.
But yeah, generally crafting like subsystems aren't really the most action oriented. Like, you don't typically interact with crafting mechanics and gathering mechanics to like have a fun gameplay experience as much as like the rest of the game is typically.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned like Nier Automata, because that one especially feels like an afterthought, considering you can't even eat fish as an
if
android.
You eat the fish, you die.
You die. So it's like, okay, so what was the purpose of getting the fish? I think it's for a collection. You can experiment with the fish with one of those things, but it's weird. It's just a weird juxtaposition for a lot of the games that's put in, because there's these big pieces of action. You're always having momentum. It's very kinetic. You're traveling across, and then the fishing kind of revolves around you having to be just standing at a shoreline for a really long period of time, just not doing combat. Like, you can't even like put your fishing rod down like you're ice fishing or something, and then go off and
That's what
hit
they need to add to games. They need to add ice fishing.
They need to add ice fishing, or like the yeah, like or what was it in they did it in Stardew Valley, but I think that they done it where you can have like the crab crab traps and stuff, and
yep.
you put them down and then come back and collect them later.
We're gonna fix fishing in games right now that are non-fishing games. You get to make traps, you get to make an ice fishing hut, and then you get to use it to ice fish.
Yeah, you get fishing drones.
You get to make a fire, an ice fishing hut. You get to drink hot cocoa, and then if you're not in wintertime, you can just have a cooler full of Bud Lights.
There you go.
Because honestly, what do people who go fishing in the real world generally do? A lot of them, they kind of just they just use it as an excuse to drink the riverbed or the lake. Pretty much.
I remember in like Medieval Dynasty, there was technically a way I guess you could catch fish, but what you usually ended up doing, because I couldn't do it very well, they mostly give you spears, not like rods. And so you going in and like, can I spear fish? And eventually though you realize, I can make a fishing hut and I can assign villagers to the fishing hut and they'll just catch fish. That's probably or also, the nets. Put the nets.
Add spear fishing to games, please.
The nets are great. You put the fish nets out, and then you can collect the fish from the nets. Those are
great. Or as Crave was also saying, Red Dead, where you can just run the fish over with your horse.
You could do that.
Or you could shoot.
The dynamite.
Yeah, use dynamite to kill a lot of fish.
Dynamite would be great. I'd like to see, though, where, like, anything where you have boats or rafts, being able to, like, put your fishing rod out the back of your canoe or your raft or something and trawl with it. They kind of even did that with, oh, God, I can't remember the name of it now. And it's Spiritfarer. Yeah, in Spiritfarer, you'd be just, like, traveling along the sea in your boat. And if you wanted to go to the front while it's traveling and throw out your lure, because you're in travel mode right now, you might as well do that, and you can fish up stuff in the...
So this kind of reminds me of the last session of D&D, where you guys were like, hey, we've got mining picks, and we're in a gold mine.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, there's no rules for it, but sure. Every couple of rooms, I was like, make a perception check. Oh yeah, you see a little spot where you think there might be some gold, and roll some strength checks to see if you can actually knock some of it loose, and then did a couple D10s worth of gold for nuggets, you know?
Yep.
I made it up on the fly, but
sure.
Again, it's not really like a super intensive part of the game that's actiony. It's a little exciting because you got some gold that was found in the wall, but it's not like I was like, yeah, here's some exciting miner talk going on.
Yeah. Well, because as... I think we're getting around to saying is that fishing as a concept in games is usually not a central mechanic or a feature. So it feels very ancillary when you actually go to play it, and the rules are very, very simplistic to the point where you start to wonder, what's the real point of me doing it in the first place?
Right, and generally the point of you doing it in the first place are either one of two things, typically. One is you enjoy it as a break from gameplay, as I would do. I would enjoy fishing in World of Warcraft for hours, just hanging out in chat, talking to my friends, fishing, collecting fish, and then I would just go and sell them later or whatever, because I wasn't using them for anything really important.
Yeah.
And the other thing, if you're not using it as a break from gameplay, like maybe you're between raids and you're just like, all right, well, I'm gonna relax. That was intense. I'm gonna fish to just kind of play a game and wait for something else, that you're waiting for. The other thing you would generally use it for is crafting again, where you're collecting these fish. You either cook them or you can use them for other things to craft. Again, World of Warcraft as an example here. Other games, again, do the same thing, I'm sure. But you can use them for cooking or like alchemy, for instance, or maybe even enchanting, depending on what you have for professions.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, is that I don't really know most of the time what you would use the fish for. I've seen it in recipes. I've seen it where you can try and catch the biggest fish you can, and then you get like the angler trophy. because you caught the big fish. Congratulations.
In Warcraft, you could get a title for the angler there was a faction that was all about fishing in Northrend in Wrath of the Lich King.
Mhm.
The Kalawak,
Yeah.
the anglers there. You could get a special fishing pole, fishing hat. You could do a whole quest line with Nat Pagel
Yeah.
or Pagel.
Mm.
You could fish up mounts in some places.
Mm.
So there are some cool rewards, like fishing up a chest is always cool. Fishing up patterns or
Oh,
recipes.
sure.
So that adds some, like, all right, well, I'm just fishing, but I can also get things that aren't fish that might be valuable.
Sure.
Um,
Fishing up seaweed is always annoying, so that's a...
Yeah, fishing up old boots is always
I
annoying.
love the junk that you get. That's always good. I think I would be remiss, too, if I didn't mention something that really was more focused on the fishing. So there was a game that I played, and it's very much in like the Stardew Valley slice of life, like the cozy game kind of style, but it was called Moonglow Bay, and it was actually about, like, the central mechanic of that was not the gardening or like the building, like in My Time of Portia, but it was about being out on your boat and fishing for things. And so the way that they handle that is that you actually go out on your boat and you fish out the side, and there are like schools of fish that are coming by, and you can cast out nets to try and catch a lot of smaller fish simultaneously, and you can like trawl your net in as you're going to try and see if I can catch as many fish as I can, because I think that was also the problem I had a lot of the time. Usually they find ways so that you can get multiple resources at one time as you go further into the game, and they usually never do that with fishing. You're always catching like 1-to-1 for the minnows or whatever.
Yeah.
But also that they allowed you to go out into the waters, into different habitats and biomes, and you could drop your crab traps or lobster traps or whatever you wanted. You'd drop a bunch of those, bait them with special baits that are going to attract certain kinds of animals, and then you could come back and you could get a whole bunch of different kinds of shrimp and lobsters, crabs, clams, whatever. So they gave you a lot of different options and special rare ones, different fishing spots that you could trawl along the shoreline, and then you would go back to your place, and there was also a cooking mini game where you had to try and make the best versions of dishes.
Of course.
By searing it up correctly and chopping the fish and stuff like that. So they made it really the central mechanic. Oh, and there was also an aquarium where you could donate fish to the museum to try and get a full collection. So fun stuff like that. As far as the angler is concerned, though, if it literally is a centralized mechanic, I would certainly hope that you have boats available.
It looks like there are boats. You can just go out on the water on boats. I don't know what it's going to be different. I haven't looked into the game much for the angler. Call it Wild the Angler. But given what they did with the Hunter and how like in-depth that game was, I assume there will be like different rods and reels and different test lines of fishing line, different lures you can use.
Ooh,
I assume.
Yeah. What about spearfishing?
I doubt it.
Scuba diving and spearfishing.
I bet. I mean, that would be cool. I doubt they're gonna have underwater mechanics for spearfishing. There could be traps. I assume there are going to be a large variety of fish and colorations of them, given what they did with the animals in the Hunter having different coats and types and variants that you could find of them. So it might be one of those things where you find a rare variant of a trout as an example. Like, I know that doesn't necessarily exist as much in the real world that I'm aware of.
I
don't think you'd find. I mean, it's a different type of fish. There's rainbow trout and then brook trout, but they're not both the same fish.
No, they're different fish. I would also think that they might have like sonar and fish finders and stuff.
Maybe. I don't.
You could buy.
I am interested to see what they'll do with this game because of how good Call the Wild the Hunter is.
Yes.
And as a dedicated fishing game, it might be really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it depends on what they're using for mechanics to, like, reel the fish in, for instance.
Right. And then they've tried to do these before with, like, I can't remember what's called Bassmaster Pro or whatever those were, where you do the central fishing mechanic. I think that the one thing that's going to be interesting with the angler, though, is that there was always kind of a sense of some impending danger in the hunter.
Yeah, wolves.
Yeah, there are wolves or there's bears and stuff, you know.
Bears are only dangerous if you get close.
Yeah, but I mean,
the water buffalo, though.
Yeah, water buffalo will mess you up. But the thing about it is that I don't really know if they're going to be able to kind of create that kind of tension in the angler.
I mean, fishing line tension. Boom, boom.
Yeah, exactly. Unless we're literally going out on the ocean and dealing with, like, whales and stuff.
Yeah,
they can attack
whalers on the moon.
Yeah. That's what I need. I need Jaws. It's just gonna be... That's gonna be, like, the special map pack is going to be, like, the Jaws pack. And you have to defeat the giant with spears and with the explodable tanks. You gotta...
Yeah. See... What I would really like is if this wasn't a standalone game, but also a expansion upon the Hunter Call of the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it'd be like, all right, cool, we're going to go to the lake. I've got my 243. I've got my fishing rod.
Yep.
And we're going to go hunting and fishing.
Yeah, I think that would have been really interesting to just integrate the two of them together.
I think it would be great if they do that. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. But as it stands, I guess it's going to be its own game. Maybe just because they wanted to focus on certain kinds of mechanics, but it is kind of weird if they're going to just make you walk through the woods that are just completely barren of anything, and then so that you can get to the lakes and streams.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do. And yeah, hopefully it's fun, because again, apparently fishing in other games is not quite as fun. I enjoy it, but I know it's not everyone's thing.
It's usually more of an annoyance than anything else because it breaks up the flow of your game.
Yeah, I like it because it breaks up the flow of my game.
Yeah. But it is one of those mini games that's very ubiquitous to so many RPGs, survival games, crafting games, etc., and at the same time usually is not fleshed out very well. And I'm kind of hoping that after The Angler comes out, maybe, just because I think there's going to be more eyes on it than most of the fishing games from, Pro
Bass.
Yeah, Big Mouth, Billy Bass, Hunters,
shops.
Whatever it is. That maybe they'll try to integrate some of the stuff that they do in that into other games, because I do want my mini games to still feel fleshed out.
Sure.
Like it's not an afterthought bullshit that I have to do just because you needed to pad out content.
Sure, but then again, we also have to realize that having it be not intrusive in games is good, because then you get games like Gwent, which are a whole other game upon itself that takes far more understanding and truly breaks up the flow of your game.
Yes.
So if it's between a fairly innocuous, just press a couple buttons activity to collect materials versus a fully fleshed out fishing game in order to collect your materials, I'm going to go intrusive one that just lets me do the thing and then carry on with the other gameplay, as opposed to the one that makes me learn a whole new set of rules and forces me to play it to earn some things in the game.
Yeah. There is definitely there are two camps that are involved in this. There's the camp that needs to have your minigames specifically integrated into your game, and ones that see it as something apart from the main game that is completely optional. I would like to think that it's fleshed out and could be utilized in some way for the main game, but is not necessary for it.
Yeah. This has been our weekly guide to fishing in games.
That's right. And let's face it, I do hope at least that The Angler is more interesting than actual fishing, because you might actually catch something.
Plus, you can just drink if you want and no one's going to stop you.
That's true.
Well, someone might stop you. Check with your roommates.
Yeah. That is going to be the best part, though. You just go out virtual fishing, in the angler. You sit there, you got your drink in your hand, in your nice, temperature controlled room, and you can don't have to get out of the boat, don't have to do all that bullshit. Yeah.
Maybe after it comes out, we can do a live stream with it for a Saturday live show.
That would be something else. Yeah, that'd be fun. Maybe there'll be ice fishing. If there's ice fishing, it's just gonna be all of our characters just sitting around in the little ice hut over the hole, just looking at it.
Perfect.
Get ready for that quality content on Total Pebble Lockdown, folks.